What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Eagles rundown. Now, I delayed this video after the Eagles got trashed by the Buccaneers in Super Wildcard Weekend just because I didn't want to come on here and absolutely unload my frustration because that would have just been bad. I wanted to take a couple days to sink in this loss, to deep dive into it and fully depict all of the bad things that happened in this game. Now, I just want to start with the game summary. So, the Eagles didn't play well in this game. They lost 32-9, and we were never in it. We were down 10-0 in the first quarter, and that was the game right there. We didn't score more than 9 points. We scored 9 points in this game. An Eagles offense, the one that was supposed to be one of the best in football, couldn't even score 10 points on a Buccaneers team. This is just awful. This offensive scheme, the coaches are terrible. Nick Sirianni, if he's the man behind this offensive scheme, if he is the man calling the plays and all this good stuff, yeah, he needs to get out of here. He needs to be fired by Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, all of them. Brian Johnson, you guys know I hate him already. He is terrible if he's the one calling plays, and I feel like he's just ruined this offense. He's ruined Jalen Hurts. I liked him as the quarterback coach because Jalen Hurts improved a lot last year with him as the quarterback coach. But no, when he's not the QB coach, he cannot be calling plays. He cannot be our offensive coordinator. He's got to go. I hope he accepts a job in Carolina or something, wherever the heck that guy wants to go. Sean Desai, Matt Patricia, whoever's calling the plays on defense, because we don't even know who's doing that anymore because they've switched 50 times this year. Yeah, they both need to go. We need to clean the house. We need a fully revised coaching staff because this downfall, this collapse was historic. You may never see a 10-1 team go from 10-1 to 11-6 and lose the first round of the playoffs. You may never see that again. This is just unheard of. It's remarkable that the Eagles were even able to do that. It's unheard of. I have no words to describe that Eagles collapse. And yeah, this wild card game was just kind of a summary of everything that happened this season for the Eagles. Now I'm going to go over a couple of the stats from the game against the Buccaneers. So Jalen Hurts, 25 for 35 in his passing attempts, a 70% completion percentage, which is okay. It's pretty respectable. 250 passing yards. And now he also did give up a safety, so I do want to discredit him on that. That was a stupid mistake to give up that safety right there, take it out of a one-score game into a two-score game, could have threw the ball away, forced a punt, and got the defense who was playing well up until that point to go help you there. But nope, forced a safety. But anyway, Jalen Hurts, under this offensive scheme, he's played better than anyone could imagine, honestly, because this offensive scheme is terrible. The coaches are clueless. They're actually idiots. They don't know what they're doing. So in going 70% completion percentage and throwing for 250 yards is better than a lot of quarterbacks would do in this situation. But the one thing I also want to point out about Jalen Hurts is he rushed for 1 carry and 5 yards in this game. You're a mobile quarterback. Rushed for 1 carry and 5 yards. That is you need to get Jalen Hurts, and I understand the QB draw. I hate the QB draw, but I'm talking about, I feel like Jalen Hurts is being restricted in running out of the pocket and going up and running to get some gains. Instead, if he'll just throw it away. He'll throw it away. He'll look for a receiver, and they never get open because of this offensive scheme. It's terrible, so they'll never get open, and he throws it away. He never runs anymore. He never runs out of the pocket and just goes up, gets 10 yards, gets that first down, converts. They didn't convert a third down in this game. How do you not convert on third down the whole game? It's just remarkable that the Eagles are this bad, especially when they have almost the same team as that Super Bowl team. They're missing a couple guys on defense, but how is the offense this bad from what it was last year? Nobody really left on offense. So I digress. Jalen Hurts, he didn't have his best game, but he hasn't had the best last few games, and under this offensive scheme, there's not much he can do. I think he's going to come back next year with a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, and fully come back and have an MVP caliber season. Maybe not an MVP caliber season, but a solid season at that. I don't think he's as bad as people are making him out to be. Moving on to the rushing stats, we got DeAndre Swift, who only got 10 carries in this game for 34 yards. His longest run was a 17-yard run. So, yeah, he was gonna pound the rock if the Eagles gave him the rock in the first quarter, but instead they decided to pass every drive, which allowed them to get in a big hole, and eventually you had to pass every play because running was not going to work when you're down 30. So they didn't utilize DeAndre Swift like they haven't utilized him all year, even though he was one of the best rushers all year when you utilize him. So I don't know why you don't utilize him. Kenneth Gainwell had a couple carries, nothing too much there. Devontae Smith was the only player, I think, that really played his heart out in this game. Maybe besides like guys like Jason Kelsey and the O-line, they always play their heart out. But I'm saying like skill guy, Devontae Smith, he played his heart out in this game. He did all he could. Yeah, he had 8 receptions in 12 targets for 148 yards and an 18.5 average. That is incredible. That is what you want out of your wide receiver 2, who's acting as your wide receiver 1 because A.J. Brown was injured. Now people are like, oh, A.J. Brown was injured. You knew you were never going to win this. Devontae Smith is a wide receiver 1 on 32 or 31 other NFL teams. Like, no, I'm not going to say 31 NFL. He's a very good wide receiver, and he's better than a lot of the wide receiver 1s on a lot of teams in the NFL. So losing A.J. Brown is not the worst of your worries, especially when this Eagles offense is so terrible. They don't have good passing plays anyway. So you losing A.J. Brown wasn't going to affect much because you weren't even utilizing A.J. Brown anymore. DeAndre Swift had a couple he only had 32 yards on 4 targets, which is a 8-yard average. Julio Jones had a couple targets. He left the game with a concussion. Dallas Goedert didn't have his best game. 4 receptions for 21 yards. Quez Watkins, I don't know why they even relied on him. 3 receptions for 12 yards. Kenneth Gainwell had a couple receptions, and Olamide Zaccheaus with 1. The defense, I don't even want to talk about the defense. The defense was not good, but it was better than it has been in recent weeks. It wasn't anything jump up and down about, but we did see some life from the defensive line. Milton Williams getting there with a 9-yard sack. Nolan Smith, Fletcher Cox combining for a sack at one point. Josh Sweat in there for a sack. Brandon Graham in there for a sack. So you totaled for 4 sacks in this game, which is pretty respectable. You'll take that. But we want more. We want more out of the defensive line, especially defensive line that led the league in sacks last year. So I don't understand what happened. They fell off because Sean Desai and Matt Patricia don't know how to run a defense. James Bradbury is who I want to talk about, though. He is terrible. He can never play football again, at least for the Eagles. He is absolutely terrible. I never want to see James Bradbury suit up for the Eagles ever again. And this is me a couple days after the game. This is me when I was able to cool off and finally think about my thoughts and actually give you an accurate representation of what I think. Yeah, James Bradbury is terrible. You should have seen him in that Buccaneers game. If you saw him in that Buccaneers game, you would want to strangle yourself if you were watching that game. You want to strangle yourself watching James Bradbury play. He's terrible. He can't make a tackle for nothing. He can't guard his receiver for nothing. He fell off. So after that hold in the Super Bowl, he fell off so much. He was one of the best corners in the league, and now he might not even get a starting job at your local McDonald's. So I don't understand how he fell off this much. But I'm going to move on from James Bradbury, and I'm going to start talking about these coaches as my next point in the rundown. Actually, you know what? I'm going to move the coaching back a little bit. I'm going to talk about this offensive scheme. So all year, the offensive scheme has been split screens, wide receiver screens, QB draws, designed QB runs, or chucking up the ball for a Hail Mary. Those have been your only couple plays that the Eagles like to, don't let me forget the 4 comeback routes where everyone's running the same thing. That's been the offensive scheme for the Eagles this year. They have been terrible in coming up with diversity in the plays. They've been terrible with coming up with anything new that to fool the defense. You know, in the NFL, you're supposed to try to fool your defense, the defense you're versing, but instead they're basically handing them their play sheet and saying, we're going to choose from these 4 plays. Why don't you adjust your defense to try to stop us there? It's too easy. If you're a defensive coordinator for the other team, you are salivating when the Eagles come to play you because it's so easy. There's 4 plays. You're going to have a 25% chance of having a good defense against them because they run the same 4 plays every time. Brian Johnson, Nick Sirianni, whoever's calling the plays, because we don't know anymore, they need to get out. They need to get out of Philadelphia. They're terrible with the play calling. They don't know what to do. Okay, now I'm going to transition to coaching because I feel like I've said all I can about this stupid offensive scheme. Nick Sirianni is the first one I want to talk about. Nick Sirianni, head coach. He took the Eagles to a Super Bowl. He's took them to 3 straight playoff games, or 3 straight playoffs. He doesn't manage the game well. He can't manage his timeouts well. He can't bottle his emotions as a head coach. As a head coach, you're supposed to be the leader of the team. Instead, he acts childish on the sideline. He's just not a good coach. He's not the guy you want leading the locker room. And I'm going on a little bit of a rant on Nick Sirianni. I was a Nick Sirianni believer, and I do think that he does a good job in sometimes getting the players to rally behind him and go fight for that. But when you're losing, he's basically a worthless coach. He doesn't know how to manage the game well. He lost the Eagles locker room. The Eagles seemed dead those last 7 weeks of the year. Moving on to Brian Johnson. If Brian Johnson is the one calling these plays, then he might be one of the worst coaches I've ever seen in professional sports. The offensive scheme is terrible, and when you're calling those plays, like, I don't know what's going through his mind. Nick Sirianni's offensive playbook works when it's called by a good coordinator, when it's called by someone who knows how to call plays, like Shane Steichen the year prior. Shane had a really good design for calling these plays, but instead you have Brian Johnson, who probably sticking his nose in his finger in his nose every time he's calling a play. So you can't win like that. You can't convert on third downs. You can't convert on fourth. You can't even get any yards because you have a coordinator who wants to draw up a random play. It's like he's putting in a random number generator every time he's calling a play to figure out what he wants to do. It's just not smart football. It's not smart to have someone like that as your offensive coordinator, and it's not smart to have someone like that calling your plays. Now I'm going to move on to the defensive side with Matt Patricia and Sean Desai. So we know Sean Desai got removed before the Seahawks game, and Matt Patricia came in to replace him. So Sean Desai was terrible. He didn't know what to do. I don't know why they hired him. And then you put it Matt Patricia, and he found a way to be worse. He was terrible. We were averaging 30 points given up a game, and that was all because of their trash defensive scheme. The Eagles also forgot how to tackle on defense. I don't know how you forget how to tackle in the NFL, but they found a way to do that. They are dropping Hassan Reddick and Brandon Graham back into coverage instead of trying to rush the quarterback, and they're sending Kevin Byard into blitz on those plays. Like, it's clueless. It's clueless of what this team is doing in the last few weeks of the year. So there's not much to say, but you got to clean the house. I think you got to go full in, wipe the slate clean. I wouldn't be terribly mad if they kept Sirianni. If you keep Sirianni and get rid of all the other coaches, then I think you might see, is Nick Sirianni a bad coach, or can he work with good coordinators? So I wouldn't be terribly mad if you kept Sirianni, but I would like to see someone new, someone experienced, and someone who knows what he's doing most of the time. Bring in a guy like Jim Harbaugh or Mike Vrabel to man the head coaching spot, and they could also call one of the sides of the ball, and then sign a defensive or offensive coordinator based on whatever head coach you sign. So the Eagles have a lot of work to do. Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, they have a lot that they need to discuss over the offseason, because you don't want another 10-1 caliber team to fall off like they did and absolutely get blown out in the wild card game against a not very good Bucs team. I think they're going to get blown out in Detroit, but you got a lot of questions on your hand. The Eagles have a lot they need to do in this offseason, and I'm pretty sure Nick Sirianni is supposed to meet with Jeffrey Lurie sometime this week. It might have been today, actually, but they need to have a good conversation and find out where the future of this franchise is going to go. And if Doug Peterson had that same conversation a few years ago, that interview led to him being fired. So we could potentially see Nick Sirianni being out the door this week, but we'll find out. And about the future of the Eagles, I think we're still a good football team. I think the players are really good. I mean, Jason Kelce just retired. I might do a tribute video on him because Jason Kelce was a very good athlete for the city, one of the best athletes in Philadelphia sports history. So I might do a video on him. But you're still going to have pretty much the same offense, at least. You're going to have a lot of guys returning on defense, a pretty young defense with a bunch of veterans sprinkled in there. So you're going to have a pretty similar team. Are they going to be able to build? Are they not? So you got to figure that out. Is Nick Sirianni the guy, or is he not? There's a lot of moves going forward that the Eagles need to figure out, and I'm basically saying the same things here because this team has me like, it's awful, guys. The Eagles are awful. They suck. I'll see you guys in the next Eagles rundown. I'll see you guys in whatever next video comes. Peace out.